Greetings, 2%ers. Well, my apologies. I am well aware that it's been months since my last video, but this weekend I not only happened to have some time, but I also had a very interesting call from the owner of this car, and I could not resist the opportunity to make a video here. So we're going to take advantage of this. So do not worry, I am pretty confident that during my absence I have not lost my ability to do diagnostics. I have not changed any of my policies. If my diagnosis is wrong, I will pay for the parts I put in that he didn't need. And also, as usual, my attitude and demeanor have not changed. If there's one thing that I like better than calling out the ignorant, moronic trolls on my channel, like this asshat, and as you well know, the only thing I like doing better than that is calling out the incompetent professional mechanics that misdiagnose cars and rip off their customers, which I believe there's a really good chance we're going to do here today. So the owner of this car called me stating that he has a check engine light. He brought the car to a shop, actually at a major tire chain. I won't mention the name of it, but it's not a little old tire chain. It's a big old tire chain. And they diagnosed that he needs, get ready, 4 oxygen sensors and new spark plugs, which is going to fix the check engine light and misfire problem. That is the only thing I know about the car. Obviously, when I heard the car needs 4 oxygen sensors right there, I knew what I was doing over this weekend. What do you guys think? Is 4 oxygen sensors and a new set of plugs going to fix this car? I actually do not know the symptoms. I only know the car has a check engine light. It was just dropped off a few minutes ago, so let's see what we get. All right, let's get loaded up here with our scan tool and see if this guy really does need $900 in parts as he was quoted. That is a big old bill. This is, actually don't even know what kind of car it is. Let me look here. Okay, it is a 2004 Ford Taurus. So let's enter that in here. And let's see what we get. All right, let's pull up our codes. The worksheet with the quote states we've got an 0471, a couple of oxygen sensor codes, and a random misfire. All right, so as you can see, we've got more codes here than an Enigma machine. So one of the things we want to do is kind of look at these, and as you know, when you've seen this before, when I get multiple codes, I try to group them up as to what's probably similar here. This is going to be one of those videos that I'm going to get a lot of negatives on. Hey, you're not changing parts, you're just talking. Yeah, that's because I would owe the guy $900 if I were to replace 4 oxygen sensors and the spark plugs, and I'm not about to do that because I will guarantee this car doesn't need it. So yeah, I'm going to spend some time thinking, and that is what this video is about. So if we have time after this, I will roast that asshat later. But what I want to do is, so it's kind of weird here. We've got the 0171 and the 74 here. So we do have a whole engine lean. I was a little worried that this was going to be on one bank. It is clear it's going to be 2 banks. We've got random misfire. Obviously, I believe that's going to be related. We also have a cylinder 3 misfire. I'm not worried about that because we have an 0300. These I'm worried about. The 0420 and 0430 are CAT codes. My opinion is going to be that these CAT codes have probably long been with the car, and these are unrelated. The oxygen sensor codes, I'm noticing a very interesting contradiction here. We've got a stuck lean and a stuck ridge on the same sensor. Being 2 sensor one also. So notice nothing with the rear O2s, so the idea of needing 4 oxygen sensors is immediately dismissed already. Possible oxygen sensor codes, of course, could cause these if the oxygen sensors are truly pegged lean, so that's a possibility. What I want to do is go to a freeze frame here. I believe I had one, and one of the problems that you'll have when you've got these multiple codes is a car's computer, at least every car's computer I've ever worked on, only stores one freeze frame, and that's really unfortunate. There it is right there. We can see that none of these other ones that I open are going to have freeze frame data. You'll only have one freeze frame. That's really unfortunate. Let's look at that freeze frame, and let me get that into the shot. And what we're going to do is I like to try to use the freeze frame to get some determination here. Look at the fuel trims. Wow. Definitely lean. Very interesting that the long-term fuel trims are fairly reasonable, but the short-term fuel trims are considerably out of whack. What I want to now look at is the loop. Bank 1 is in closed loop, Bank 2 not reported. That is a little surprising to me because I was kind of going to jump to a conclusion, and you guys that watch the channel a lot probably have an idea of what I was thinking. And you know what? I am thinking it. Look right there. Why is that? Closed loop, but 68 degree coolant temperature. I'm not quite sure what to say about that, but for those of you guys that follow the channel, you probably know what I'm thinking. We've got a Ford with the V6 engine that in what appears to be open loop is running extraordinarily lean. And my first conclusion on that, well, not conclusion, my first hypothesis is going to be a leaking intake manifold gasket. But to do that, I need more information. One thing we'd want to do is confirm the symptoms. The symptoms of that, of course, would be only on cold days. You would have this problem happen when you first start up the car, and then as the car warms up, of course, it would run better. And we've actually got 2 videos that show that. So that's where I'm kind of thinking right now. Little thrown off by the closed loop, I admit. I think what I'm going to do is actually just call the customer and without poisoning his well, see if he can give me a description of the symptoms and if they're congruent with my hypothesis here. I actually only talked with him about arranging drop-off tonight and just the description of the check engine light codes from the shop that he took it to, so I don't have any idea of the symptoms or anything. So let me do that and let's see what happens. All right, well that went pretty good actually, so I will tell you pretty much verbatim what the guy told me, and you're going to see it's going to be very, very supportive of our hypothesis. So the owner states that he actually bought the car used this summer from an individual. When he bought the car already had check engine light on it, and the owner stated that the check engine light had been on a while, but the car runs perfectly fine. And that, I believe, is going to be the 0340, or I'm sorry, the 0430 and 0420 codes for the cats. And then the owner states that the car ran perfectly fine, no problem, until this winter. Once winter hit, he started noticing that when it was cold outside, the next morning when he goes to start the car won't start, it barely chuggles. He has to really try hard to get it to get running. Once he gets it running, though, the car runs perfectly fine, no problem. Totally congruent with our hypothesis. So the problem is that now I have to let the car sit overnight because, again, the car just got here, and I will tell you when I got the car into my driveway, I started it right up, no problem, ran smooth, drove it right into the driveway, no issue. So what we're going to have to do is let the car sit overnight so we can diagnose the problem if it is indeed an intake manifold gasket leak. Now, that said, I don't want to waste time. So there are other variables that could cause this. So while the engine is warm, because when we're doing the cold diagnosis, we can't let the engine be running very long, right? While the engine's warm, I want to run some diagnostics just to rule out the other variables. So let's go to the dry erase board of knowledge, list some variables, and see what we can eliminate right now while the engine's warm. All right, remember this thing? Hey, let's see if my markers even still work. Oh, cool, they do. So let's see, our first suspicion is going to be intake manifold gasket, of course. And that's based mostly on symptoms. Remember, you never make a diagnosis off symptoms, unless, of course, you're an idiot. Let's see, what else would cause this? Well, one of the possibilities could be O2 sensor failure. Now that we've got the car warmed up in closed loop, we should be able to verify if there's an oxygen sensor problem. I am fully willing to admit if the front O2 sensors are pegged lean because of O2 sensor failure, that would absolutely cause these symptoms, except for the fact that the car runs great when it's warm. So not too confident on this one, but we're going to also check this because this is the diagnosis from a professional mechanic. We don't want to just dismiss a diagnosis from a professional mechanic, right? So that would also mean the spark plugs as well, which we could pull some spark plugs out and inspect them or whatever, but we'll just go with the O2 sensor since we can easily test that on the scan tool. What else would cause this, guys? And many of you guys are saying fuel pressure. Absolutely. Low fuel pressure would definitely cause it. The only issue I've got with the low fuel pressure, the fuel pressure seems to be perfectly fine when the car warms up. Not very consistent with a fuel pump issue or fuel pressure regulation type issue for sure. So not too crazy about that one. Another possibility could be a Maf issue. Again, a little bit of a problem that it's better when the car warms up. So these are all possibilities that we can pretty easily test. Let's see, what other variables can we come up with? All right, IAC is, of course, another variable for sure. And gosh, quite honestly, there's lots of other ones too. But I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and verify these things that we can dismiss right now. And while we're looking at the scan tool, we may be able to look at some other possibilities. So let's connect this vehicle up to the scan tool and see which of these things we can definitely eliminate. All right, well, you can hear the car started up, no problem. And I don't know if you could hear it, but you could also hear the idle decelerate. And right now it's idling quite smooth. You hear a little decline in the idle here, maybe, and that is clear indication that the IAC is functioning. So right now the car's running pretty smooth and can almost rule out the IAC just that alone. Obviously the IAC's working. Looks like we retained our information here. So we're going to load this up, and obviously it goes without saying, the first thing that I'm going to do obviously is do a fuel trim analysis on this. However, we do have a professional mechanic stating we need 4 oxygen sensors. So we're going to go ahead and do the oxygen sensors first just to rule that out. Obviously, if I find that the O2 sensors really actually are truly pegged lean, I'm going to assume actually that that's from an intake manifold leak, although there's no evidence of it now. But we'll see if we can do something to liven up the sensors. If the sensors respond to propane or whatever, then we know that the O2 sensors are not the issue. So let's go ahead and do that first. So let's see, Bing 2 sensor 1, we're going to put that on. And, well, we do have O2 sensor response. So I'm not thinking we got an O2 sensor problem here. What do we want? Bank 1 sensor 2. Help me out here, guys. Bank 1 sensor 2 is there. All right, so oxygen sensor activity, you can clearly see it. Let's see if we can get some responses here. You see they turn off at the fuel shutoff. Right now we're running a little bit lean here. Let's wait for them to wake back up again. All right, there we go. We've got them back up again. Let's get response for a rich condition. And let's add propane in there and check it out. Rich condition. So you guys tell me, do you want to put oxygen sensors into this car to fix it? I most certainly don't. That is a big O misdiagnosis. All right. Taking away the propane, we see they lean out, of course. This is clear indication that the oxygen sensors are functional. Let's look at our dry erase board of knowledge here and see what we've got. All right, oxygen sensors are not the problem. Fuel pressure, let's look at fuel pressure. All right, and if I remember correctly, there is no Schrader valve on these engines. And let's see here. Yeah, I can guarantee there is no Schrader valve on this engine. But this is a Ford after year 2000, so there's going to be a PID for fuel pressure on here. So, you know, usually I go ahead and hook up my fuel pressure gauge with some convoluted scheme, but the fuel pressure PID is very reliable on this, so we're going to just use the PID and make this quick. All right, so the first thing I want to do is do some homework, and we're going to need a minimum specification of 35. Flip back to our scan tool, and fan just kicked on with the temperature there. I'm going to admit I'm a little concerned about the engine running relatively warm here for really no reason that I can think. Let me look into that as a possible problem. Obviously, you know, something like head gasket or whatever. I just wanted to make sure we've got coolant in there, and there is plenty, but obviously a new variable comes to mind, a head gasket problem. Certainly would explain not being able to start the car, but then it runs better when it warms up. That is a possibility here. What did we want to do here? Oh yeah, fuel pressure. Fuel rail pressure right there. Okay, great. And check it out. Well within spec. So let's do a couple of fuel pressure tests here. All right, maintaining fuel pressure. All right, notice how the temperature jumped up pretty high there. We have one fan operating here. Let me just double check. Yep, both fans are operating here. So it should cool down a little bit, but yeah, the temperature may be a little bit of a clue there, but we're going to rule out fuel pressure here. Let's see what else we got on the list. All right, let's move over here, and idle air control was next on our list. I've already ruled that out just based on the startup. You could hear the IAC works. So where is it? Idle air control. Right there. Okay. So let's take a look there, and that's a little jumpy. So I mean, the idle sounds great, but we're doing pretty good there. Let's do this. Let's put some load on and see that we get the expected response from the idle air control. So I'm just going to turn on the air conditioner. All right. And doesn't appear we've got a major adjustment here, does it? Huh. Well, you know what? It doesn't sound like the AC compressor kicked on. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, we've got no cold air blowing, so the air conditioner doesn't work on this car. So that's not going to work. But let's see if we can just go ahead and get the response manually here. You see we do. So let's see if it comes back up. It does. Okay. All right. Idle air control motors ruled out. Let's see what we have next. We really don't have anything next. One of the things is, notice the temperature again. Little concerned about that. So right now we're going to add one more variable to our dry erase board of knowledge. All right. Fuel pressure. Maf we haven't checked yet. I forgot about that one. IAC we did. Let's put head gasket here. Obviously, hard start in the morning when it's been sitting overnight because of a head gasket failure. The only trouble is why only when winter approached. Well, one possibility, maybe he didn't blow a head gasket until winter came. All right, what I want to do now is let's run some fuel trim here. And that is what I would have normally done if the car was not seen by somebody before me. Where are we looking here? Let's get, so one thing I do remember, even though it's been a long time, is I am definitely going to pull up short-term and long-term fuel trim. Remember that fiasco when I almost misdiagnosed by getting lazy and diagnosing off long-term trim only? The only trouble is, where's my fuel trim at? All right, there's long-term fuel trim, bank 1. What is the blue there? That's my fuel pressure. I need to get rid of that. We're going to replace that with long-term fuel trim, bank 2, which is not an available PID. What about short-term trim? There's short-term trim, bank 1. Long-term trim is almost maxed. The short-term trim is correcting just a little bit, so we can see the long-term trim is not maxed out yet. Still doing its job. Why can I not bring up bank 2? All right, back to our data here, and well, interesting, the fuel trim just jumped down 10 points for some reason, so not quite sure what the story is there. Let's look and see what else we can rule out. Oh, no wonder it did. I just lost communication with the scan tool, so let me see if I can reconnect here. I want to jump back over and make sure we're connected by looking at engine coolant temperature, which I want to keep an eye on anyway because this car is running warm. And let's see if there's anything else we can look at here, but I'm kind of inclined to do a compression test based on the fact that the engine does seem to be unusually warm. Timing I'm not worried about. Let's see. Let's look if we got any misfires going on here. Because right now I don't believe we do. And EGR just came to mind here. So let me verify EGR operation real quick here. Yeah, definitely EGR operation is validated, so I'm not worried about that. And I wasn't anyway, because it wouldn't explain the idle smoothing out when it's warm. So what else do we got here? I'm running out of ideas. All right, the only other thing I remember was the mass airflow sensor, so let's pull up some MAF data and just roll that out, and then we're going to narrow down to really only one of two possibilities, I do believe. Let's see, the mass airflow is only given in volts, and that looks about right. Up to 3. Gonna not be indicative of a dirty MAF, but we can also verify that, of course, through fuel trim. So let's bring our fuel trims up. Short-term, see there, short-term fuel trim bank 2. All right, let's check for MAF responsiveness here. All right, move over here so we can get an instantaneous result. And we're going to test the Maf sensor here. We've shown this many times. This also, by the way, is going to be our fuel trim analysis at the same time. And check that out. How good is your guys' memory? Because I haven't done this in months, but I can tell you I do remember that that is not going to be a Maf sensor. We have a sharp decrease in the fuel trim with increased RPM. If this was a Maf sensor problem, we would see the fuel trim increase. So Maf sensor is not the issue. Very indicative of a vacuum leak right there. Very, very indicative. Let's do it again. It's going to drop with the RPM. Even just a little bit of RPM really drops it a lot. Just the slightest amount of RPM increase. That's going to be a vacuum leak. Let's go back and check our temperature. We want to keep an eye on that. Where did my temperature go? Let's get the engine coolant temperature. I want to make sure we don't overheat. Yeah, a little warm. But anyway, that is definitely verification that we've got vacuum leak here. So I think what I want to do is just, only because of the temperature being a little bit unusually warm here, I am going to rule out a head gasket issue. And then the plan is to let this car just chill out overnight, see if we can duplicate the symptom, verify that we have a problem with an intake manifold gasket. But we know for a fact we've got a vacuum leak on this car as it is right now. The fuel trim's just able to compensate for it. All right, so what we're going to do now is we don't need this guy anymore, and he needs to be charged up anyway. And we need to get to the part that I don't really care too much to do, and that is we got to get our hands dirty. But I want to do a compression test here. Now the only problem is the spark plugs, as usual, are way back here underneath this plenum. So I'd have to remove the plenum to get to the spark plugs. Obviously not my style to do a lot of wrenching here. What I think I may do is a relative compression test just in the sake of time. Obviously everybody watching this channel knows how to remove a plenum and do a compression test, so I'm not really too worried about showing you guys that. That's pretty basic. So let's do a relative compression test and rule out this head gasket. All right, I'm going to admit it has been a long time since I've used this gizmo and done a relative compression test, so I may admit my memory may be a little lagging here. But while I set this up, one thing I did want to bring up, a lot of you guys I'm sure are wondering right now, Matt, you just confirmed 100% of vacuum leak on this car. Why are you doing a relative compression test? And the reason is strictly because I'm a little concerned about the high engine temperature. It's fairly cool in here right now. I don't see any reason that the engine should be running that warm. And I just am a little bit creeped out about that. It also is congruent with the symptoms. The thing is that it's possible maybe there's an intake manifold leak and a head gasket problem. But I need to rule out the head gasket problem, mostly because of the temperature. If the temperature wasn't an issue, I wouldn't be doing this. So let's set this up. All right, this is, let's see here. Actually, the first thing I want to do, what's the easiest way to disable the car from starting? Actually, we'll just disable the ignition right there. And then, what do we want to do here? I don't remember. Let's do 40 amp scale. And let's, I think, peak detect here. And yeah, definitely that 5 second is not optimal, I don't believe. Let's try 1 second. I think that'll work. Let me make sure we've got no triggers set there. And I believe that may work. Let's try that again, and let me just reposition this so I can see it while I'm cranking. All right, hopefully there's no glare on the camera there. That's good. I will tell you this, while I couldn't see anything on the screen, you know that I tend to have an ear for the sound of the compression. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know what that screen showed, but it definitely didn't show a compression problem. I can guarantee it. You could hear the compression. Listen while I crank, and there is clearly not a bad head gasket here. All right, and I don't like our scale here. Let me adjust that scale a little bit better. All right, let's go back and smooth this out, and let's take a look here, and we can see that we're, let's see, we got a couple of lower ones, just a little bit. Let's see if that's consistent. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 lower, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the same, 1, 2. So a little bit of inconsistency there, but definitely we don't have a blown head gasket here. I'm not even worried about that. So maybe there's a cooling problem with this car that I'll have to look into separately, but it is not my focus right now. Right now, we've got a confirmed vacuum leak. What I'm going to do is let the car sit overnight just to be sure, because right now it's running kind of good. and we will make sure that we catch the vacuum leaks when the car is freezing cold. So we'll come back tomorrow morning.